welcome to this video where I'll be going over how I went from just having my models ready for the table to adding a few highlights after they've been victorious in battle. So the first thing I would recommend is the flesh. It's part of the model that really stands out. What I did was use the olive flesh from Kruleboyz with a very small amount of the bright yellow green. This creates a very yellow mix of paint, which is fine because the orc skin, the Kruleboyz skin, has a lot of yellow in it compared to like the green skins, which is obviously more of a pure green. My dilution with water is fairly light, meaning not much water. I wanted just to be able to highlight these models. These are just to, this isn't to win a contest. Excuse me. This isn't to win a contest so much as it is just to, what I like to do is when a particular model or a unit does well in a game that I play, I give them highlights. And it gives me a way to stay interested in the continuing betterment of the paint job that I've done on these models. And it's fun. It just kind of adds to the narrative. I play a lot of narrative games. These models are an addition, the reinforcements to my Path of Glory set. So I'm just, like you do on highlights, picking out the features that stand out. So like in the face, just all the creases, and these models are just done so well. It just makes it real easy to pick them out. And I'm only doing one highlight, so which is another reason I'm not glazing up on these highlights. The only really bit of glazing that I do will be on the cloak parts. And mostly just due to the light nature of it being a light gray. But yeah, just work your way around the model, picking up some details, high parts, the cheekbones, the lips. In the chest, there's like the muscle tendon there that's going from the neck. That was kind of hard to get to. Again, whenever doing, I think, any highlights, it's not so much like, I need to use the smallest brush, which I recommend against. This is a size 4 brush from Kruleboyz. Again, I love their products. I love their brushes. I think they're a great price. And most importantly, they keep the tip, which is what is necessary for those highlights. So now, moving on to the wooden stock and some of the other brown parts, I just use a mix again of the olive flesh. I already had it on my palette, and a little bit more than the yellow, but still not a 50-50 mix of light umber. So I'm going to use this light tan mix for all the wood parts, as well as for the straps on his feet, that hold the weapon up. It's, again, this isn't to win a contest. This is just to bring out some of the incredible details that these models have. So just picking up the high spots. You do not want your paint to be very much wet. You want it to be kind of dry so that it won't, like when you're trying to highlight the threads or the cords in this around his leg wrappings or for the weapon, you don't want it to just flood into the cracks like a wash. You want it to just go where you touch the model. You don't want it to flood off into that, so keep that in mind. Now, this is a pretty cool part. This is the only thing I do multiple highlights on, and this is this cool Kruleboyz belt buckle thing that they have, shield. So I'm just going over it with a red, a bright red. I do have this kind of thinned down a little bit, but not much, just so that it will flow a little bit. We are going to build up this red, but just going over the high points for the most part. That way that the deep red from the contrast paint, the Blood Angels red, and the Agrax Earthshade will still keep the recesses darkened. Then I add, it's about a 50-50 mix or a 1-to-1 ratio with the red and an orange. Again, these are very translucent colors, and when they dry, they're not as vibrant. Most of your acrylic paints are going to kind of lessen in intensity when they dry, but especially these transparent type of colors. So we're going to just go over, maybe a little less of the highlight of, what you did red, maybe a little less with the orange, and then we're going to put a final highlight of just pure orange here in a second on just some of the highest points to really draw out some definition in the model. I like showing my videos in real time. It's fun and amusing to watch, especially highlighting done at high speed. But I want to show you, how long does it take to paint a model? Of course, I edit out all the paintbrush washing and stuff like that. But, to see, am I spending too much time? Am I not giving enough time or care to an area? So this hopefully will give you an example. All right, so the cloak. This one was a little trickier. So I used Apothecary White. I don't think that's right. I'm going to change that out. I actually used a bright neutral gray from Pro Acryl and thinned it down. This is going on top of the Apothecary White, but I just thin it down more so than I did in the other highlights, because this first layer of highlights, it's covering very well, pretty good, but we are going to go over most of the cloth. Again, it's a transparent paint, and when it dries, it's not going to be, the coverage isn't going to be near as intense. I do leave some of the dark areas. I'm going to go over this area with basically a glaze of this paint, just to cover even the darkest areas, because it is so intense. This creates, I think, the cloth of the robes here, the clothing part, creates a great contrast between all the other colors, which are very subdued. Even the green is, it's very saturated. It has that gray tint to it. So I wanted to be kind of bold in the highlights. I wanted them to stand out as I think you'll see I did. You can always go with whatever color. If you go with a gray, you could, or any other darker colors, browns, leather colors for the cloth. You just want to highlight those appropriately. Or if you're going to use a stark contrast, if you use a bright gray like this, you may just go with either a smaller area of highlight or a different type of highlight like stippling or crosshatch highlights, so that you can have bright highlights, but it covers a smaller area. So I'm just going over the model here. Okay, what I'm doing here is I have a glaze. You see how wet this is? So this is the same paint, the bright neutral gray, but it's just really thinned down. I just use water and kind of going over the whole cloth part of the model to just kind of lighten some of the edges of the highlight, and on some of these edges kind of make them just a little bit more intense on the high point, high areas of it, just to kind of bring it all together. Now I'm just highlighting up the metals, and what I use for the copper is a white gold. To me is just easy. I'm only doing one highlight on it. I'm not taking it up to pure silver or white. So I didn't want to make that extreme jump. I will use a silver for the pure silver for the dark aluminum areas, but for the copper parts, I wanted something a little less stark. So just find your way around the model, find the high points, edges where light would, I guess, accumulate, where it would build up. A lot of edge highlighting type work here. And then for the small silver areas on the helmet and on the weapon, I use just a silver. Again, I don't use the Vallejo metal colors because they're so thin that it's hard to control them, and it just covers the whole area. This way, the Pro Acryl is a little more thick, a little more viscous, and I can control where I'm placing it on the models much better. So just going over this, I don't know, this carrier toolkit that he has on the quiver, as well as the front of the man skewer weapon itself. Just hitting a few highlights there. I just go along the sculpted edges, some of the rivets and areas on the model, just so that they stand out. His shoulder pauldron as well. Just again, just to show some of the bright points on the sculpture. And then for the base, I just do a simple dry brush. There's that bright neutral gray that I was using for the cloak. I had some more on my palette. So I'm just doing something light. I want to break up the colors on this is just on the cork, and again, just to add something, just to break it up and add a little bit of texture to the base. And then just take your X-Acto knife. What I did was take my X-Acto knife and I just cut a little trickle stream kind of thing. And we're going to put, the next step is I'm going to put Nurgle's Rot, some kind of this technical paint to like give it a yucky, swampy kind of feel. Right, here we go, technical paint, Nurgle's Rot. You can, I wanted to use something green to kind of, swamp it up a little bit. Use a brush that you don't plan on using for painting, or toothpick or something. It's pretty thick. One of the things I do recommend, put enough on the base, like in this little crevice that we cut in there, so that it fills it up level. I had to go back, and I need to go back on some of my other models. I didn't put enough in it, and it just kind of looks awkward that it's not, that it dips down. So then I just take it onto the base a little bit. I did different designs, on the bases, just so that they, it's not to win a competition, but it's just to bring some uniformity. I have all my Kruleboyz have this basic concept for their bases. After you dry brush, you may have to go back and touch up on the rim a little bit on the outer part if you got any, but you can always do that. And there we go. That is our little swamp water finished. And then just to break up the large areas on the base a little more, I just put a few random spots of super glue. And then I have just a mix of green and yellow flocking that I just sprinkle on there. You want to make sure that Nurgle's rot is dry, otherwise you'll have a mossy swamp and people make fun of you. I don't know. So there you go. So there's a couple of our Kruleboyz man skewer bolt boys painted up for you with the details. I hope this video gave you some inspiration and ideas of how you could touch up on your models, maybe after a battle where they've been victorious or taken out some of the heroes of order. Hey, if you would, I'd appreciate it if you could like and subscribe and maybe even share this video with any other gaming and playing groups that you may have. And until then, have a wonderful day.